We talked about this a few months back, but protesters were basically stationed out in front of the home of Bob Fu, who is the president of China Aid and happens to be a senior fellow here at FRC for International Religious Freedom. Now, he lives in Texas. And they were bussing in these Chinese protesters, apparently funded by a billionaire Chinese media executive, Guo Winnie, who was just hounding Bob for some reason. But just recently, a restraining order has been issued to prevent these individuals from hounding Bob and his family. And that's one side of this. But he has continued to speak out against China's human rights abuses, in particular on the issue of religious freedom. And so without explanation, after a speech that he made critical of China, Bank of America closed all of his accounts that he's been doing business with for 20 years with no explanation. Now remember, Bank of America has been criticized recently because they were the ones that handed over all the financial records or transactions of those who were in Washington, D.C. During January the 6th. What's this about? Well, here to tell us, Bob Fu is joining us. Bob, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Tony, for having me again. Yeah.
Well, I let me first start with, I guess you're glad to have a little peace and quiet around your home now.
That's right. I'm thankful. I mean, you would think that at West Texas, this is the least place you would face a Chinese Communist Party invasion. That while we are fighting for religious freedom in China, the Communist Party's, persecution did not end up in China's own border by putting pastors in prison, by sentencing a pastor to 5.5 years imprisonment for refusing to put a Communist Party leader's portrait on the wall of the church, tearing down so many churches. So its persecution, its long arm has already moved to the U.S. territory. So I'm glad the federal judge issued this restraining order, and the perpetrator, led by this guy in New York City, made a consent at least before June 1st. He will be restrained from coming back to my home.
Amazing how brazen China is in harassing people here in the United States. We're not talking about in China. We're talking about here in the United States. But I want to transition. I'm glad that hopefully that will be behind you. And as this has been exposed with media attention, but I want to talk now about Bank of America. I'm wondering, are they going to change their name to Bank of China because of your apparent criticism of the Communist Party in China? Without explanation, Bank of America has shut off all of your accounts after 20 years of business with them. What is going on?
It is a total shock to me. I mean, all my children, including our 16-year-old daughter, her debit card and her bank account were totally also shut down. And the most mysterious thing was we called the customer service, called the bank fraud service, and the Bank of America, they simply just refused to give any reasoning and just declaring according to some mysterious rules. They said, we have the absolutely right to terminate anyone, anytime, without any obligation to tell you a reason. And so yesterday, this is the most update, they called me back all of a sudden. I don't know whether it's because a congressional friend calling or something, and said, by the way, your bank account is reopened while we're talking. I said, give me a reason for shutting down. He said, irreversible business decision, and all of a sudden, yesterday morning, said it's reopened. I still have not been able to verify it's reopened, but that's what they told me.
Wow. Amazing how emboldened these American companies are just to trample on those with whom they disagree. It's shocking. Bob Fu, thanks so much for joining us. Thank you for that update, and I do hope you get an answer. And if you do, I certainly want to hear what it is. Their explanation for why they just shut down your account.
So the FBI is also asking. So I hope they can find an answer whether it's Bank of America becomes Bank of China.
All right. Thanks so much. Bob Fu, President, China Aid, and Senior Fellow for International Religious Freedom here at FRC.